Weekly Download, a podcast about interesting games, industry news.
Brought to you by Big Games Machine.
I think we are going to be talking about some ghost stories today some of these stories. There's definitely some tricks, more tricks than treats, I would say, overall in this little grab bag.
I mean, you've really gone for it there with like the Halloween references. We are recording this for context for everyone because I guess we're rolling now. We're recording this on the 30th, but it will be published on Halloween, so we have to make sure that I think
Halloween
we've got
treat for
permission
you.
to be super spooky however we can be with the weekly, like the spooky download, the weekly spookly download.
What would the rapid rundown become?
It'll be I'm gonna like go off screen and then pop on and be like, oh, it's the rapid rundown to scare people. But yeah, we don't want to scare anyone today. Not really, maybe a little scare, but perhaps the scariest thing for anyone listening or watching is that we're back again with episode 4. One of our colleagues told us that I think it's 99% of podcasts don't get past the 3rd episode, so
we are part of the 1% at last.
We are part of the 1%. Are we? Or is this the 3rd episode? Now I'm losing track.
Making me do the math.
I feel like this is the 4th one. I'm going to check my sheet. This is the 4th one. Here we go. So we did it. We did that. We've done it. We got to episode 4. And today, I know I always say this, but I think today is another really good episode, I think. But we're also revisiting old friends again. Xbox. Xbox are back. Everyone at Xbox's like leadership team seems determined to just fuel the games journalism industry week on week with more crazy quotes, spooky quotes, perhaps. So we've got Xbox. We've got a spooky Italian brain rot Roblox Fortnite creative legal battle to talk about, which, as people who are not connected to the youth of today, which pains me to say, is terrifying for us because there's a lot of stuff in that we don't understand about Italian brain rot, but it's an important story because of the legal precedents.
Absolute nightmare. Really is. I cannot wait to not have to talk about that anymore. And we can move on to other things like Netflix, what they're up to with their, much like your problem when you're looking on Netflix yourself, you're probably looking at your page all over the shop with different things being recommended to you. That's kind of how Netflix is running their game strategy anyway. So very on brand for them. And when we do hit the rapid rundown, we are covering everything from NASCAR to Pokemon. So it's going to be a real rapid.
I feel
rundown.
like you can take a look at what we're wearing and figure out who picked out the NASCAR story. That's quite an obvious one. But before we get on to NASCAR, which will be way in the future, let's get started with our first
Daytona and
double NASCAR. Honestly, you're ruining the spooky black hoodie vibe we've got going on.
We're covering WWE later.
We can't cover everything that you want to cover. So we'll start with something you might not want to cover, which is, like I said, we're going back to our old friend Xbox, who in the last few weeks, but in the last few years at this point have really taken a stance of separating themselves from the whole console war malarkey. And the newest quote, the newest stuff we've got from Xbox is from Xbox Studios president Matt Booty, who this week has come out with something really interesting, which is essentially Xbox's view is that they don't look at Sony, they don't look at PlayStation, they don't look at Valve, or they're not looking at people inside the gaming space as their competition anymore. They're now focusing pretty much on, hey, look, our competition isn't with games. Our competition is with games. It's with TikTok. It's with movies, and it's with TV, which feels like even more of a shift from where they've already been in the last few years. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this, Jack? Because I think this is something that's just going to keep popping up as we go, it seems.
Well, my initial thought was not a serious one. You said the man, President Matt Booty, which made me think of, for our I haven't checked the stats on Buzzsprout for our demographics, but for our American fans who might follow college football and NFL, the Booty family of quarterbacks, General Booty. I don't believe that this is a relation to that, but every good team needs a quarterback, and right now it feels like Microsoft are running up on the hurry up offense, and they don't really know what their plan is. And 1 minute they're taking on PlayStation, and the next it feels like they're ready to team up with PlayStation, and instead they see TikTok and movies, which haven't even been in the same conversation before, as their competition. So for sports analogies aside, again, it's a real, they're making up as they go along. It often feels like they're at Microsoft.
Yeah, but I think it's a really good point, and I think it's something that probably everyone listening, everyone watching has thought about, maybe without realizing. But the facts are that, you know, we all have a limited amount of time to consume content, which is not a phrase I like to say, but I think it's the appropriate one. And that time is divided between, for me, I read a lot, I play a lot of games. You know, it's a question of where do you put that time. So I think that Matt Booty's point here is a super valid one, and I think as well he's made reference to the fact that consumers, in his opinion, don't really have attachment to devices anymore. So, you know, the idea of being a PlayStation fanboy or, you know, a PC fanboy in his head is quite an archaic way to look at things. I personally disagree with that, but I think the point is really valid. And it really does inform Xbox's strategy, which is we don't care about where you're playing your games, where you're playing our games, as long as you are playing them. Whether that's PC Games Pass, whether that's buying Doom on your PS5, whether that's playing this game on the Switch. Xbox don't care about the hardware anymore, and we know that. It's all about maximizing how far the content can reach and how many people it can reach.
And therefore how much they're going to make from that. We have some data here that Xbox hardware revenue in the latest Microsoft earnings report has dropped 29%, which is a 2% decrease overall. Big 2% doesn't sound like a lot, but with all these bits taken into account, clearly things are changing, and therefore it's a reaction to the revenue or lack of that they are seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. On a separate point, is this have we got like a chicken and the egg situation here? Did Xbox always plan to pursue this strategy? Or is this a reaction to the fact that, if we're being realistic and we're being kind, they lost the PS4 generation massively. They lost the PS5. I'm not even referring to the Xbox systems in this because it's the truth. You know, they've lost the PS4 generation. They've lost the PS5 generation. From where they were with the 360 to where they are now, the market share for an Xbox piece of hardware has torpedoed through the floor, to the point now where really we have PlayStation is, to me, the de facto hardcore gaming device. And for anyone not watching, I just did the bunny ears to make that hardcore point, because I think it's quite a silly way to look at things. But that's PlayStation own that now, and then Nintendo exist within their own sphere, and there's just not really a place for Xbox hardware anymore. So I'd ask, you know, how much of this is Xbox being forced into this approach? Because realistically, if they wanted to keep exclusives on their platform, they'd be no one. They wouldn't be selling it to anyone, because, sorry to say this, Xbox fans, but the Xbox hardware brand is dead in the water, I think, and we've seen that for a few years now. But again, this is just further proof of that reality.
It's their own marketing. The Xbox, I think we've already touched on this in a recent episode, of the anything is an Xbox, this is an Xbox. The marketing strategy they were doing was telling people this could be an Xbox, your existing setup can be Xbox, and that
Stop caring about our hardware.
Stop caring.
Really?
As we
Yeah.
move forward in time, we have more and more data coming out. We have these stories. It all starts adding up that even if they don't know what they're doing, they seem to have at least a core concept of we don't want to do hardware anymore. We just haven't figured out what's next.
I mean, I think to potentially answer that on Xbox's behalf, it's Game Pass. You know, Game Pass is the answer to I think their problems in their eyes. It's less about they don't care about
maybe, but they haven't figured out how to, because all the tier changes and the subscription problems
and the price increases.
Again, they're not sure how they're going about that, if that is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like we always say this, but it's one to keep an eye on. Xbox, I think, however this goes for Xbox, I think Sony in particular, I think we mentioned this last week, Sony will be keeping an eye on this. Nintendo won't, I don't think. I don't ever foresee Nintendo following in this direction, but, we know that Sony have started taking those steps into releasing games on PC. Maybe we'll see Sony put games onto Nintendo platforms in the future. I don't know. I think it all depends on how this goes for Xbox. But yeah, I mean, the question is next week, will we also be covering more Xbox news? Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me because I'm sure someone else at Xbox will come out with something. But if we pivot away from Xbox, but stay with that PC focus, this next story that we're looking at today is A, really interesting, but B, makes me feel very old because of the what it's about. I mean, Jack, do you want to try and give like an overhead of what exactly is going on here, or would you like me to do the honors? Because I will read
the headline, which is Roblox creator sues copycat Fortnite creative game, and you think, okay, there's some kind of lawsuits happen all the time. We've talked previously about copyright and things, and it's when you start getting into the bullet points of actually looking at this story and you go, okay, it's a battle between people creating things on Roblox, not the actual creator of Roblox itself versus the creator of Fortnite Epic. This is people creating things within these games now suing each other. So we've gone into that level of this.
Yeah, this was always going to happen. I'm sure this isn't the first example, but it's a very prominent one. It's picking up a lot of headlines this week. And what we're seeing here, just before we go into the specifics, is a massive legal battle within the world of UGC, user-generated content, which either way, whatever happens from here is going to have massive, ramifications on everyone who creates, like you said, who creates experiences within Roblox, within Fortnite. Battlefield 6 launched recently. That's got essentially a UGC, mode within it, so people can create their own content. But the question is, this example, what's this example about? And specifically, if people are familiar with the wacky and wonderful world of Italian brain rot, this is probably going to be familiar to you to some degree. But
if
essentially,
if we're sitting in a court of law and they say this case is between the representative of steal a brain rot and stealing brain rots, two different brain rot related stolen things.
So the thing is, we're joking around here, but the reality is that the creator of Steal a Brain Rot, which is a Roblox experience, a UGC experience, is suing the creator of what they deem to be a copycat version of the game within Fortnite called Stealing Brain Rots, as you've said. Spider Games, who is the developer of the Roblox game, I'm going to just say Roblox and Fortnite to keep things simple rather than the actual names. They are claiming, and this is a full legal suit that they're pushing, they're claiming that the Fortnite game is a blatant rip-off. It's stealing artwork, it's stealing gameplay elements, it's stealing design from their game. And they're also alleging willful infringement, which is essentially that the creator of the Fortnite experience has consciously taken the decision to steal their work and put it in Fortnite. So it's as much as the nature of these games is funny, the actual ramifications of it are super serious, because what we're essentially looking at here is, can you legally protect IP if it's created within a UGC experience? Who do those responsibilities fall on? What are the roles of Roblox and Epic and other content, other platform holders in these conversations? And it's something that hasn't been a thing in the past, because it's a very new phenomenon. We look at Roblox, and I think people underestimate the pure volume of players, and a lot of them are younger players, who are consuming all of their video game time through these experiences in Roblox. So you cannot just dismiss this as just some like silly kid thing. This is, whether people like it or not, this is the future of video games. This is the now of video games. And yeah, like we've said, this case, whichever directions it goes in, it's going to really set the tone for, what legal powers do you have to protect your user generated games that you're making. And again, I know we joke about what the content of these games is, but that's not the important point here. This, as we discussed last week with Sony and Tencent, it's another example of people, coming in and saying, hey, this is mine. People can't just go and steal it and monetize it on other platforms, in the same way that you couldn't steal a Zelda game and go and release it on the Steam store, because Nintendo would come down with a hammer. It's no different, really.
It undermines the incentive to make that content. If somebody is putting time and resources, it goes back to arguments about paid mods and the recent headlines we've seen from that. There was a big thing with Nexus mods and other games, charging for mods and things like that. Because again, that's the users generating content for this game, and some games thrive off of that. The sheer amount of GTA videos for GTA Online on YouTube are based around what people have been able to do, whether that's all the crazy race designs they've been able to put together in the tracks, or it's purely a case of, we've imported these character models from other games or created them from scratch, so you can have Scooby-Doo, Shaggy hanging out with Iron Man in a gun battle with some wrestlers and Sonic. Like, it's whatever you make of it.
I feel like we just had like 10 seconds into your brain then by that list of...
What could I remember seeing pop up on the algorithm?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to the legal precedents, doesn't it? If Spider Games is successful here, you're essentially establishing the fact that, hey, anything you create within one of these UGC platforms does constitute protected IP. On the other hand, if they lose, to me, it's essentially open season. And if you're a creator and you see someone else do something in Roblox and you can go and make it in Fortnite, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. The real trouble comes when these platforms offer monetization to players, because again, you're ending up in situations where people are potentially stealing from other creators, monetizing it, and facing no repercussions for it. So I think I'll finish here. I'll let you speak. My last point on this would be, I'd hate to be any of the judges or anyone involved in this, because I think, again, this case could be a precedent that lasts for a long, long time, and either way, it's going to be problematic.
But if companies don't want it to get to that stage of going to court, they're going to have to think about moderation, checks, having a clearer terms and conditions, making people understand that. And that will be tricky. As we've alluded to, some of the audiences in these games skew lower, they skew younger. If they're going to be making that content, are they aware of the terms and conditions? Are they just scroll to the bottom and tick the box and then not understanding why or even how this thing works? Versus, we've seen brands before choose to partner with these creators because they are too late to making something official themselves, and they see that the community have made something, and so they want to get involved. It's similar to what you see on some other platforms like Reddit, where a subreddit will be made by the community for this thing, this game, this band, or whatever. And then it's because it's bigger than the official one, or there hasn't been an official one, suddenly the subject of that subreddit wants to get involved. And now you have to work with that existing community. So lots of checks to be done. Again, as we keep saying, trademark, one to keep an eye on, because this thing isn't going to go away. UGC has been around for a long time. It's just how it evolves. And we're seeing the next evolution of that, which is the money gets bigger and therefore more people start caring.
The claws come out as everyone's fighting to see what happens. Yeah, and I mean, as much as UGC has exploded, these are the kind of situations where there could be a curtailing of, especially when IP is involved. As far as I understand, all this Italian brain rot stuff is AI generated, so that's a whole nother thing when it comes to IP and who has the rights to these kind of things. But again, it is just that question of, legally, where do we stand here? How can you use these IP? And like I've said, AI generated IP, goodness knows where that's going to go. But yeah, as you said, something to keep an eye on. I'm sure this will keep popping up. It might take months, it might take years, but either way, a lot of people, I think a lot of platform holders will be keeping an eye on this, because as you've said, Jack, it's got to inform how they moderate these platforms. And, you cannot just take advantage of people's creativity without considering the potential to not be to blame, but in situations like this, how much of it is on the platform holders for allowing these things to go ahead? Because ultimately, the same as Apple is responsible for what pops up on the App Store, it's the platform holders who are allowing these experiences to be made in the first place. So
there's a lot of money at stake, much akin to Squid Game, where there is a lot of money at stake should you win that. And that brings us on to...
I mean, even if you lose, the money's still at stake. You just don't get it.
And your life's at stake as well.
True.
So if you don't want to be in it, don't nod, because this is our third major story involving Netflix, the Squid Game IP, and the studio Don't Nod, because Netflix has shuttered Boss Fight Entertainment, that was under its umbrella working on Squid Game.
Yeah, acquired in 2022 as well. Let's get that out there as well, because again, I'll let you carry on, Jack, but we are seeing so many situations where studios are being acquired, they're making a game, they're releasing the game, and then they're essentially being dumped to the side 3 years later. So, just want to get that in there, because this isn't a case of Netflix have owned this studio for a decade. It's 3 years, they made a game, now they're gone.
And they made a good game as well. Good as in...
by sales, by downloads, by players.
Top of the charts.
In over 100 countries. In over 100 countries, Squid Game Unleashed topped the charts. So, I don't work at Netflix, but to me, is that not a success story?
Yeah, you'd expect that to be a success. But clearly something has changed, because Netflix has shuttered the studio. This is a changing story this week, because the start of the week we reported in our daily download that Netflix was shutting Boss Fight Entertainment. And within days, another story is out that Netflix was signing a partnership with the studio Don't Nod. And this is an interesting approach, because similar to how we've already discussed Microsoft, doesn't sound like there's a plan with these chopping and changing. But if we take a step back and look at it as, rather than owning a studio internally, they would just rather partner with one externally for however long they plan to, it secures that studio some financial stability. They don't have to get acquired. Netflix doesn't have to invest in something they clearly only want for the short term. So there's questions about Netflix's game strategy, which they are clearly still interested in doing.
They just don't know what they want to do.
Don't know how they want to go about it. Don't Nod is a narrative-based studio. It's what they're known for. Netflix is quite interesting because it experimented with narrative before. In 2021, there was the Escape the Undertaker interactive film done in partnership with WWE. It's not great, going to be honest. But
it's interactive and it's narrative.
Interactive and narrative. But Netflix were happy to experiment. And I think that is something they are still doing within their game strategy. It's just, again, we're not really sure where they're going with it.
I mean, on the surface, it makes perfect sense. For anyone not familiar with Don't Nod, their last release earlier this year was Bloom and Rage. I can't think. It's Bloom and Rage something. It's got a subtitle, but Bloom and Rage. They've worked on the Life is Strange series in the past. Obviously, a long time ago at this point, because the IP doesn't belong to them now. But they've got pedigree in the narrative game space. So, in theory, Netflix pride themselves on telling great stories on its TV, is what they do. So the idea of Don't Nod working with Netflix on a major IP, reportedly, don't know what major is considered to be nowadays, but you look Stranger Things, Wednesday, they've got enough of that IP for it to make sense. But that's entirely different from other games that they have released. If we go back to looking at Squid Game Unleashed, it's a very, it's an entirely different kind of experience. So the question to me is, what it's like what you've said, Jack. What is Netflix's plan here? What do they want to do? What direction do they want Netflix gaming to go in? I think the really interesting thing, and it's something you've said, is that they may be looking to pivot away from acquiring studios and bringing people in-house, because there's a cost to that, which isn't just the cost of developing a game. Even if people aren't making games, if you've acquired that studio, they're on salaries that you're having to pay at all times. There's other factors like that in play. Whereas what I've wrote in our script is, it feels to me that this is very much like a plug and play style decision, where they go to Don't Nod, say, here's X amount of millions of dollars, make us a game about this series. 2 years later, they release the game comes out, Don't Nod get paid, Netflix get paid, and then they're happy, and there's no other overhead costs, and it's more flexible for the studios. So we could have a situation here where Netflix don't just partner with Don't Nod, but perhaps they're going to go to other studios and say, hey, we want you to make another Squid Game mobile game, perhaps, or we want someone to make something about Stranger Things, or we want someone else to make a multiplayer game about this series. But we don't know. Netflix have been doing this for a long time now, and as someone who's looking at this stuff on the daily, the amount of times I see Netflix's name pop up, to do with layoffs, to do with studio closures, to do with acquisitions, to do with new IPs that they're working on games for, it doesn't seem like there's a plan here. There's a lot of chopping and changing, but Netflix is a monolith, so they can get away with these kind of things because ultimately it's not really their focus. It's very much a supplementary income and supplementary content that they can plug between. When they released a Stranger Things game a few years ago, that was very much like, you're going to have to wait a while for a new series, so here's a game, which is an interesting business model. But
yeah, they're taking it slowly, which is my segue into the opposite of that with the rapid rundown.
The rapid rundown. I didn't do my spooky bit. Ooh. We'll put in. We're not going to do a sound effect, but we'll just have me going, "Ooh, the rapid rundown, spooky edition." But you love NASCAR, so I can tell you now, people, Jack, the amount of times we spoke about NASCAR video games and how much he wants them, I can tell that this first story sent shivers up his spine, I imagine. Perfect for spooky season, isn't that right, Jack?
we referenced, I, in my agenda of pushing American sports on our non-American listeners, we touched on the college football game recently in an episode, and NASCAR was in a similar position. NASCAR licensed the game out to some different studios over the years. EA famously had it for a long time, and then the license went to some smaller places, and the quality of the games went down, as bad as people can perceive some EA games. But the license was given to iRacing, who their bread and butter is literally making racing games.
I mean, the clue's in the name, isn't it?
Motorsport games did have the license, and they weren't very good at making games about racing.
But still, though, the clue's in the name of what they do. Like, I like that these companies are very transparent.
Maybe not great.
Not well, but they do, though.
What's interesting about this one is that the game is launching in a couple of weeks. In the lead up to it, in the marketing, the studio decided they were going to work with NASCAR to bring some of the drivers in who regularly stream and play games. They were going to work with some content creators and have a big online race. What they got wrong is that the settings were all mashed up, so people were going into random lobbies. They weren't all connected, so they were racing against other people, getting the game early. The drivers, they didn't plan on hanging around. Carson Hocevar dipped out of the stream to the point where the presenter was asking him a question, and he just wasn't there anymore. And the other driver, who was part of this, had to say, Carson's gone. This is about trying to prove that your game is ready for market, get the people interested, and leverage the IP, leverage the drivers to bring in people who watch NASCAR but maybe don't watch people on Twitch playing NASCAR. And they just messed.
They haven't done that. They haven't done that, clearly.
Huge going wrong. And it's a thing of, did they rehearse this? They clearly didn't. Having a mixture of the drivers and content creators is always a risky thing. Sometimes it can pay off, sometimes it can't. You get weird disconnect of these guys do this for a living versus people who stream this for a living. And it's not meant to be as serious as a sim racing style game where you have other athletes like Max Verstappen actively also racing and sim racing. This is meant to be the kind of game that you can put on your Xbox if you still want to use one, or a PlayStation, and enjoy a NASCAR experience, because you don't want to pay for the iRacing subscription and have it treated like a job. And it's just a really bad day one mashup. And they're not the only sports game suffering at the minute. Football Manager has, but it's interesting that even the biggest brands can still get these seemingly very easy things wrong.
Well, yeah, and I think we could talk about that all day, but I think on the subject of big brands, doing things wrong, we're going to talk about Amazon and Amazon's New World, which is their big multiplayer game that I don't think people have even spoken about this game in a few years. It got 10 seasons worth of content, and now it's been shut down. It's been shut down early next year, but official development has ended. And that's in the aftermath of the big layoffs we've seen at Amazon this week, which very much looks to be focused in on their gaming division as well. So a lot of roles being lost there. There's not much to say about this aside from the fact that this is what's happening. It seems that, again, Amazon, like Netflix, both super keen to try and make money out of video games, but neither of them seem to know how to do it. I think it's a testament to, the big boys that we have in this industry now who have been here for decades, and they've been here for decades because they're successful and they know what to do. And, Amazon have tried to speed run that process of building a studio and building games, and it's been a disaster. And to all the people who are still playing New World, if there are even people, I'm sorry to hear this, but I think, again, we're going to see what direction do Amazon pivot towards with gaming now, because this cannot be anything but a spectacular failure. And it's a shame, because I think we always want more variety. As much as Amazon is a huge corporation, everyone in all the big boys are big corporations. It's still good to have that variety in that competition, but it feels like Amazon have taken a stab at it, missed, and are now going to have to reconsolidate and figure out what Amazon gaming is, because at the moment it's an empty studio with a dead game.
My segue from that was going to be, speaking of empty, Pokemon Legends ZA, 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 depending how you want to pronounce it.
As much as it pains me, I think it's ZA.
It's set in Pokemon France, so maybe it's a ZA. Either way, that empty city where that game is set in has not deterred people buying it, or maybe they buy it and then feel tricked when they actually see what they've bought, because it has had the strongest US launch in Nintendo history, I think, since Zelda.
I think this is across the board.
Across the board?
I think this is...
That's even worse.
Fact check me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that Legend ZA is the biggest launch in the US since Tears of the Kingdom, which we all know how that did at the time, so I'm not surprised it's not beaten that. But yeah, I mean, I know, Jack, you're a massive Pokemon fan. So am I. I've been playing Legends EA. It doesn't matter how good or bad the game is. Ultimately, this is just a testament to Nintendo and Pokemon is a combination that, I mean, as this headline proves, only Nintendo are capable of beating it. And this is it might be considered a mainline game, but I think people look and say this is a spin-off. It's not a flagship generation defining game akin to, Generation 9 with Scarlet and Violet and so on and so forth. But yeah, another huge success for the Pokemon Company. I think as, the Pokemon Company and Game Freak, I think as much as people will continue, rightfully so in some cases, to criticize Game Freak, the formula works. And I feel like it's going to keep working. And this gives them a massive boost, I think, ahead of Generation 10 next year, which I think for a lot of people is going to be a real, line in the sand in terms of what can the Pokemon franchise look like going forward. But hey, either way, it doesn't matter because it will still sell like gangbusters.
It will still sell. But again, the Pokemon fans in us hope it will be a breath of fresh air rather than dirty.
And on the topic of breaths...
Nintendo is releasing a Breath of the Wild vinyl box set in the West, which I'm sure you're very excited about, Tom.
I am really excited. I'm a sucker for Zelda. I'm a sucker for a lot of Nintendo's music, but especially Zelda. And I love collecting vinyl. What I think is really interesting... Sorry?
It all adds up for you, doesn't it?
It does. It's a tantalizing combination. I am going to pre-order this, but I think what's really interesting is that from Nintendo, they're coming out and saying that this is a experiment to see what the demand for these kind of things in the West looks like. And they specifically cited the fact that, we're looking at the West here. We're seeing how well can these physical soundtracks in these kind of forms sell. And to me, I expect this to do really well. We've seen over the past decade, I think, that explosion in terms of vinyl again. But even in the past 4 or 5 years, so many studios now are releasing game soundtracks onto vinyl. And yeah, I'm glad to see Nintendo doing this. That the 8 LP box set is already firmly in my line of sight. And quality products from Nintendo, I'll never say no. I think it's good that, again, we're seeing more and more companies experiment outside of just video games. They're looking at how they can use IP, use the big IPs that they have to make money outside of games. And, to me, it's good to see Nintendo doing this. We've seen Nintendo Music, that's a year old now. And this feels like that next step in terms of giving people who have, who have the money and are happy to pay the price, this really high value and high quality products, especially for Breath of the Wild. I don't think it's the best Zelda soundtrack, but I'm saying that as if I won't buy this thing. But yeah, I think on on that nice breath of fresh air, we can wrap today's episode up. And yeah, Jack, do you have any closing thoughts that aren't related to NASCAR?
Wow, you're trying to say I have a one-dimensional...
Oh, no, I know what you're like.
I was going to clarify that NASCAR story. I don't think I made it clear enough. The game is out on consoles. The game is coming to PC next week or the week after. This was the creator series. That was the whole marketing thing for these creators, and therefore that was a huge failure for that on day one. So that can go in somewhere.
No failures here.
No failures here. No, the only failures would be if anyone didn't already subscribe and they are late into this race. You can still jump on and hit subscribe on your preferred podcast platform for the next episode.
Or if, I always say I am a fan of writing. I love reading. If you would prefer to read your news, if you don't like to listen to our lovely, well-tuned tones, the alternative is you can subscribe to our weekly download newsletter. That's via LinkedIn. So that's once a week on the Friday. You get all the stories from the week, the big news, the small news, a little bit of fun, everything in between. Or if you really just want to stay up to date with everything every single day, I've got the answer for you too, because we've got our daily download, which is, an email that you'll get every day, Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. And that's the biggest stories of the day straight to your inbox. And, if you want to get every piece of news that you can and you want to stay informed of all the big developments, that's your best bet.
There we go. As usual, I have been Jack, joined by Tom. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the next one.
And we'll see you next time. Happy Halloween.
Spooky season if you celebrate.
To all spooky season celebrators, we'll see you next time.
All spooky enthusiasts, enjoy.